right, guys, how we doing? Sam here with you. It's kind of late now. It's about 1:30 in the middle of the day here on Tuesday here, and by request, you guys want to look at eBay. So, wow, it's a difficult count coming down. But let's just do a quick review here. So from the '09 low, it's hard to argue with that as a completed 5, right? It's much like the broader market. So this certainly looks like a 4, right? 1, 2. You know, it's all there. All the fib swing relationships are solid. So that does look like we get an expanded flat here. So it looks like we get a little kicker in the B. Now here's the high probability zone. Yeah, we get a little through it, but it looks more like that's your 4. You get a little ABC in there, and then the big drive up. There's the 2618 for good measure here to suggest that that's a reasonable location here for us to be anticipating that top. Now coming down, so the first thing you got to look at is, well, if it's a completed 5, we're looking for the 50. So this is not rocket science. All right, so likely, and that's just a front run. The algos kick in. You've got all this congestion. Is a logical spot for it. Here was all the big volume, so you get this low, so note here the little low volume node. That's very common, right? You'll see that. Right, market doesn't accept it, moves quickly away from it. Here would have been the more acceptance, so you might have seen it coming down here, and we may still get there because there's certainly a case to be made for this simply just first part of it. So to simplify, if we're going to think about it in 3 waves, that's not unreasonable. So it's very common for the first drive down of the retracement to tag the 50. Now, if we're going to do more than that, we got to make sense of this section here, which is not easy. So I think it really is just a process of elimination. So looking at this, right, you're going to struggle. So because what you want to do is go, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got a diagonal, but it doesn't work because this would be the shortest wave. And I've looked at all sorts of different combinations there. So I don't think you can get there without going into a combination. So there is a clear ABC to this level. Right? So I think we can lean into a W there. This is a little right, and this secondary low here. So because it looks like, oh, maybe I could go into a 5 there, but it looks more like an ABC. So we have a contender for the X, and you know the other thing that's making this difficult, the algos have been just spot on here. Right? So look what happens here. So here's the first drive right between the 50 and the 618. This is a couple of ticks, and they go right to target, right, and then we get the reaction. Well, this continues to be. So if you stay with that, pulling down here to the next one, right? Now here's the 50. All right, so these are I assure you guys, this is not random, right? That's just algos having their way with the market, right? So they're just, but remember, an algo doesn't care about an Elliott count, so they're just working on these swings. So we know, right, of course, algos are in here, right? But as we try and organize it, right, which is always the idea, we're trying to, you know, I was having this conversation with a member the other day. It's not so much about Elliott Wave being able to predict the future. Nobody can predict the future. We're just trying to use it to organize the past so that we can look at where we're likely to see reaction zones, where probabilities would dictate that if the past here is correctly identified, right? And that's always the if. Then we can look for areas where we would anticipate a reaction, which could be a pivot turn. It could be a trend change based on organizing what's come prior to us, right? I always try to encourage people. It's not about being able to predict the future. It's about where are we most probably looking for the potential for a trend change, and then can we use everything else we know to have that view be supported by market structure, those kind of things. Well, here, so you can see, look here at this pivot here. So if I pull that off. You look here, well, there's just natural, right? It would just be a logical area for us to find some resistance. Now you get the little low volume node here, prior swing from the high, that was the 23. You got a reaction off that. Here's the front run on the 50. Very little reaction on the 38, which makes you think this is more likely a deeper correction as we completed a five wave up here, right? We have a significant pivot. It would be surprising, right? So that's the only way you can say it. It's not that the correction couldn't be over here. But if we look at how we organize this would be an unusually shallow series of corrections for this to be done down here. So that's all you can really say here is that it's not that it's not possible, because I can work through a count here that gets me finished down here. But it would be unusual for that to finish us down here in this structure. So you might even think of it this way. If you just put a channel on it, like that's an awfully skinny relative to what we just did. So if you think about the length of time, right? So I always try and stress symmetry. So this isn't, when we peak here, that's a 9-year trend, right? We're going to do that in, when we hit January of 18, and our low has been December of 8. Oh, no, is that right? What did I get wrong? There's December. That's just, so really this is. What the hell is wrong with me? I can't even see it. Let me zoom in on here. So this is, what's my high here? The 5th of February of 18 to December of 18. So this is approximately a 10-month retrace here. I think I'm doing that math right. So this February through December, right? So yeah, so exactly a 10 months. So we have 9 years corrected by 10 months, less than a year. Shit, right? It's possible, right? But I certainly wouldn't be betting heavily here that the correction's over. So, right. So, and that's purely based on symmetry, because if we just look at I got this as a skew here. If we just look at the wave relationship, where is my 1? Is it? I guess it's here. It could be here. Actually, it could be 1, 2. Right. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the 3. Yep. So I digress. Right. So this, we know whether the 1's here or here doesn't really matter. We've got a completed 5. So could that be the 2? Yeah, could. I wouldn't trade off of that. That's me personally, right? I just would look for more time to pass. So let's go dig into that. Since we know this is at a 50, right? And we have all the structure, everything we just went through. Let's go down to a 4-hour here and see if I can get here on the 4-hour. This subdivision is very tough. So again, I come back to, you got to try and work through. I'll work backwards and say, okay, because your first thought, you're dying to call this an impulse, right? But it doesn't work. You can't have it, right? So this would be the shortest. So you can go ABC into a W. I can go ABC into an X. I can go AB. I've got a good 5-wave structure here. It's a little skinny, right? But the 1 is longer, right? It works, right? So you get the extension in the 5. So I can go, so from this count, I can get WXY. All right, now here's the tricky bit, but I just don't see another way to count this, because this would give you an X. It's a 3-wave, and then it would appear we go into yet another ABC. Now the alternate is that we're not done here, that we've double bottomed, and maybe this is the B. I can't eliminate this, and that's partly a function of the very short C or 5, so if this were. Let's see how we could do this. So we could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into an A. So that's a possibility here. So if that X, all right, so what would this symmetry look like here? That's not terrible. So we could do it this way. We could get this 1. That's not insignificant. So was that? That's nothing tied to earnings. 3, A, B, C, 4. We could definitely have that. Can't eliminate that as the A wave of the larger correction. So now you're thinking, if that's the A wave, well, how this B here, if this is, so one possibility is here that something's finished here. So you'd have to check multiples. So I would start with that X. All right, so we've just bumped into the 50. All right, but of course, algo doesn't give a shit, right? It's just going to go off dominance. So we're sitting at the 38, but you can't eliminate these, right? Any of these could be in play. So you got to check each of them. So you kind of back into it saying, okay, well, where is this starting? So if this is the Y and I'm in the X, well, if this is an A, well, I got to be paying attention to, because this could invalidate the count here. So this particular count would be, well, let's see, I guess we could have, so if that were A, we could have an expanded flat. We could have an expansion in the B, although you'd prefer not to count on something that was the anomaly. So while you can finish it. You can finish it. You can finish the A here. This is a contender here, and we could be in the A, B, C of the B. There's just no clear way. You've got to see what happens here. Do we start to head back down? Then you can lean into that a little bit more as a contender for the B. 3, 4. Just out of curiosity, this pivot here relative to the low on the 3. All right, so right to a 50, but we don't make target. And just because there's a target, right, as I often remind you, doesn't mean we have to make it. But I don't see a different way to count this. It's just a function of how high are we going here. So as I just showed you, I would start here. Well, remember, this was also technical. So you kind of want to back into where was it a technical pivot? Right, this was a perfect 50, right, so clearly, right, we don't have to wonder what happened there. So that becomes a pivot that I would certainly use as an algo used it. So I would start there. Now, as we hover here at this 50, I'd be paying attention to violating that pivot. Not that it would necessarily invalidate, but you'd prefer to see that hold if we were going to head back down here and we were going to get. So now we'd be looking for a more substantial C wave to get us down here. And since it fits with this as a 50 for that target, so we'd be, it's a little wonky. So you'd be finishing, come here. You'd be finishing this as an A, B, C. That works. It's not crazy. Now the B here, what am I on, a 4 hour? Not great for where's your B in there? So it's that becomes the problem. Is it here? Is it a very shallow B? Do we have a little triangle in here, something around here that's a candidate here for some sort of a B wave here? So we've gone A, B. All right, that'd have to be a failure swing here, bumped into the 50. They couldn't get through. It's possible. Well, so you're kind of stuck without clear subdivision here. So part of it, the issue is here is this. It's hard to get a. Well, you'd have to do it. You'd have to get a 3, 4, 5. So it doesn't play. I actually think this looks better here if this is going to hold. Because this, here's my 1. This 1, 2 length of the 3 was a perfect 50. Even though we don't make the target down here, we do get a new low. So I think that's a contender for the A. But a lot of uncertainty here. Jesus, where is there not uncertainty of late? Right? It's very, very difficult trading of late. A, B, C into a Y, X. There's no other way to get an X in there. I considered this possibly as an A, B, C for the X to be here, but I don't think it works as well because I've got a nice clean A, B, C here, so I can get an A, I get an A, B, C. This looks like a impulse retracement, and then I can get the diagonal. Yep, yeah, by a tick. Look at that, just barely, just enough. Boy, that is by a tick. So you could get the diagonal to play here into the C. A, B, C, it's mighty skinny for an X. Mighty skinny. But if that starts to roll over now, then I think this is a solid count here with the possibility that you're pushing the X back a little higher, right? So I might end up with the X back here, depend on, do we roll over here or are we going to push up? So no way to slice this other than this is a complicated count. So one thought, right? Always, right? If you're not sure, could be that, could be this. You know, why chase a trade? let it show its hand a little bit more. Are we going impulsive here? Is the correction done here? And we're going, as I showed you, right? We're just a couple of ticks off the 50. Could this be the start of a new trend higher? Well, then you come back to it and you go, all right, so that means I need so if this 5 is done and this 50 is the 2, so if we've done a 1, 2, which I think is less likely, but let's consider that. If we've done a 1, 2, and this is the pivot down here on that 50, then I need a solid impulse out of this. And we know we're going to run into, well, of course, the all the way is going to be up here. So can we get that to run as a... Jesus, come here. Can we get that to run? Well, it's 38 from the high. So if this goes a little higher, it's going to have you reconsidering the count here. You know, would I trade it? No, I wouldn't. It's just too uncertain. So for a new trade, I mean, really, more than it's setting up a short rather than a long, I don't think there's enough here to make the case that the correction's over here. It's again, it's eight years to buy 10 months. It's not enough. Now we come down lower and we get a good ABC, something like this down here, then yeah, I like it. But here, so I mean, even if you were looking at the short here, so yeah, that's it's not terrible, right? So you've got, so that's from 36 to 21, 15-point swing there. So it could be done with options, right? This, you could sell a credit spread here. And I say that because it's just uncertain enough to where if you sell the credit spread, then time decay is working for you. So you can set that up as a potential, right? So maybe you'd sell oh shit, sorry, I got that on. Sell around 36, right? And cover it, right? So you work a credit spread, maybe a 36, 38 credit spread, trying to take advantage of the time decay and not trying to be so precise about the path here. So buying a put, you could also buy a put here. You could buy a put here looking for that to come down, right? Then time's working against you. Right, anytime you're looking at an option trade, you always, if you can, structure it so that time works for you. And now volatility is on the higher side here, so that could be advantageous. Now, if you haven't traded options, or disregard that here. But if you were looking for just the straight trade, is it a buy? Well, you sure would want to get a better looking impulse there to make a case for that to be a 1, and then taking the retrace into the 2. So if you were thinking, oh, correction's over, I hit a 50, and there I've got a 1 going in, well, I'd want a better looking impulse, right? Even down to the 60-minute. That's not a great looking impulse. It's just not good looking. Right? There's no clear, where's your 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe. It's just not good enough, right? So you got especially when you're in equity, so many things to trade. Why force something here that's just not, could be, could maybe, shouldn't? That's my view, right? So I can't. If I had to trade it, I'd sell a credit spread, and I'd want to see. That's me, right? If it came up here and we stalled here, I'd look for even maybe a spread 37.50, 38.50 credit spread, something like that, anticipating the B here. Now, if the broader market starts to rock again and this starts to go, well, you can always unwind it, or you can roll it up, right? So try and reduce the loss here and roll it up to maybe a 38.50, 40.50 credit spread. Try and use the time decay to your advantage, but this just doesn't, there's not enough there. And this, right, this is, our best estimated guess here as to what's going on. Could be recounting this as well. So, all right, I'm rambling at this point here. So I don't see anything worth really being aggressive here. But since you guys were curious about it, I'm always curious whether people are interested because they can't figure that count out, because that was a bitch. And I wouldn't. I mean, this is a count, or there's probably other ways to count it. But if somebody's looking for a trade here, I don't think there's enough for a new trade. If you're in a trade and you're trying to figure out where we are, well, again, this will be the key level here, right? This as well here. Are we going to get through this, come up to the 50 and roll over? Then you might have to reconsider some of this. We can go past that X wave there, so we could get this as a B. Tricky one, right? So unless you're in it, I'd wait for more clarity. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I can add there. All right, see you later.